She expected Emilio to walk back through that door. She expected answers. Explanations. The second half of a sentence that had been hanging in the air since dawn. She did not expect the door to open slowly. She did not expect the footsteps to be lighter. She did not expect to look up and feel the entire floor of her reality crack straight down the middle. Because the woman standing in the doorway of that safe house was not a stranger. She was not someone Serena had never met. She was someone Serena had spent 4 years believing she would never see again. 4 years of grief. 4 years of unanswered calls. 4 years of checking her phone at 2 a.m. for a message that never came. 4 years of telling herself that some people simply choose to leave. And now she was here. Standing in an ivory wedding dress that belonged to a ceremony Serena still didn't fully understand. Looking at Serena with eyes that held something far worse than guilt. Something that looked like the weight of a decision made 4 years ago that had never stopped costing either of them. She said one word. Just one. Rena. The nickname nobody else had ever used. And Serena Blake felt something inside her chest that had been locked for 4 years. Crack completely open. Her name was Vera Cross. That was not the name Serena had known her by. 4 years ago she had been Vera Calloway, her college roommate for 3 years, her closest person for longer than that. The woman who had stood beside her through her mother's illness and her father's silence and every in-between moment that required someone who simply knew how to stay. Vera had known how to stay better than anyone. Until the morning she didn't. Serena had woken up to an empty apartment. No note. No call. No explanation. Just Vera's keys on the kitchen counter and a half-drunk cup of coffee that had gone cold sometime in the night. She filed a missing persons report at 11 a.m. She received a one-line text from Vera's number at 3 p.m. I'm safe. Please don't look for me. I'm sorry. That was it. That was the end of Vera Calloway. Serena had looked for her anyway. For 6 months. Until the looking started to cost her things she couldn't afford to keep losing. And then she had done the hardest thing she had ever done. She had stopped. She had grieved Vera the way you grieve someone who chooses to leave differently from the way you grieve the dead, harder in some ways, because there is no clean ending, only the endless open question of why. She had carried that question for 4 years. She had carried it into a fundraising gala in Mexico City. She had carried it into 6 months with Emilio Varro. She had carried it down a cathedral aisle in $220,000 of ivory lace. And now Vera Calloway was standing in the doorway of a safe house in a city Serena had only known for 6 months, wearing a wedding dress that had just ended the most publicly devastating moment of Serena's life. And she was saying her name. The nickname nobody else used. Like 4 years was a door they could simply step back through. Serena stood up slowly. She looked at Vera for a long time. She said nothing. Because there are moments when the thing you most want to say is so large, so compressed, so loaded with years of unsaid things that it cannot find its way out as words. It can only sit in your chest like a stone. And press. Vera took one step into the room. Serena held up one hand. One hand. Flat. Stop. Vera stopped. Because she knew Serena well enough to know what that hand meant. She had always known Serena well enough. That was the cruelest part of all of it. The silence between them lasted 30 full seconds. Serena counted. Then, very carefully, very quietly, in the voice she used when she was working extremely hard not to break. Tell me everything. Not, where have you been? Not, how could you? Not even, why? Just everything. Starting from the morning she left the keys on the counter. And Vera closed her eyes. And when she opened them, whatever she had been holding for 4 years had finally, irreversibly shifted from a secret into a confession. She didn't start from the morning she left. She started from the night before. There was a man at your door, Vera said. At 2 a.m. You were asleep. I answered it because I thought it was your neighbor, the one who always came by late when his key didn't work. She paused. It wasn't your neighbor. Serena sat very still. He was tall. Calm. Well-dressed for 2 a.m. He handed me a photograph. Vera's voice didn't shake. It was the voice of someone who had rehearsed this moment so many times the emotion had been worn smooth off it. The photograph was of you. Taken that week. From the street. Through the window of the coffee shop you went to every morning. The coffee shop. The same coffee shop from the photograph Emilio had placed on the table between them last night. Serena felt the cold arrive. He said there were people who had been watching you for some time. He said that you had become, and he used this word specifically, adjacent. That your proximity to certain information, certain people, certain places, made you visible to individuals whose attention you did not want. What information? Serena said. What people? I was 22. I was a student. I know. I didn't know anyone who. I know, Rena. Vera looked at her directly. Neither did I. That night. The qualifier landed like a stone dropped from height. Neither did I. That night. Meaning she knew something later. Meaning there was a before and an after. He gave me a choice, Vera said. Leave within 24 hours. Disappear completely. No contact. No explanation. In exchange, they would stop watching you. Your visibility would disappear because your most visible connection, me, would be removed from the picture. The room was very quiet. Or? Serena said. Or they would make you visible in a different way. A pause. A permanent way. There it was. 4 years compressed into 2 sentences. Vera had left to make Serena disappear from the wrong people's radar. She had removed herself from Serena's life like a splinter being extracted, painful, damaging, but necessary to stop the infection spreading. And Serena had spent 4 years believing she had been abandoned. She had spent 4 years cataloging every way she must have failed as a friend, as a person, as someone worth staying for. She had spent 4 years carrying a grief built entirely on a lie she had told herself. The stone in her chest shifted. It didn't dissolve. It changed shape into something more complicated and considerably more painful. Because grief, you understand, is one thing. Grief you have to rebuild from the beginning because the story you told yourself about it was completely wrong is something else entirely. You should have told me, Serena said. I couldn't. You should have found a way. There was no way, Rena. Vera's voice broke for the first time. Just slightly. Just at the edges. Any contact, any message, any signal, anything, and the deal was void. And you were. She stopped. And I was what? Serena said. Vera looked at her. You were the only person I had left, she said. And I was not going to let them use you to get to me. She didn't tell Serena everything at once. She told her in layers. The way you tell someone something that could detonate them, carefully, one piece at a time, watching their face between each piece to make sure they're still standing. Serena was still standing. Barely. The man who came to our door, Serena said. Who sent him? Vera was quiet for a moment. His name is Marcus Lane. The name meant nothing to Serena. It clearly meant a great deal to Vera. He was as one of the most careful men I have ever encountered. He doesn't operate loudly. He doesn't threaten directly. He builds pressure through proximity. Through making people aware that he can see them. That he knows their patterns. Their connections. A pause. He had been watching your building for 3 weeks before that night. Why me? Serena said. I keep coming back to that. Why me specifically? Vera looked at her hands. He told me you were adjacent. I believed that for a long time. A pause. It wasn't the whole truth. What is the whole truth? I'm getting there. Vera. I'm getting there, Rena. Some things have to be said in the right order or they don't make sense. Serena pressed her lips together and waited. After I left, Vera continued, I was taken to a property in Monterey. Not a prison. More like a managed residence. I was not mistreated. I was simply contained. For 6 months. While Marcus Lane decided what to do with me. What to do with you, Serena repeated. Why did he need to do anything with you? You were a graduate student. The look on Vera's face shifted. Something moved behind her eyes, something old, complicated, carrying the specific weight of a truth that had been kept alive through sheer effort for years. I was not only a graduate student, Vera said quietly. And there it was. The first crack in the story Serena had known. Not a fracture. Not yet. Just a hairline split along the surface of everything she thought she understood about her closest person. My grandfather made a deal with Emilio's father 18 years before we met in that dormitory. A deal that transferred certain protections in exchange for certain obligations. When my grandfather died, when I became the last of that line, those obligations transferred to me. Serena stared at her. You had a debt to the Varro family. An inherited one. Yes. And Marcus Lane was trying to use that debt to pressure the Varro organization. Using me as the lever. She looked at Serena directly. And using you as the thing that would make me cooperative. The room was very quiet. So when he came to the apartment, Serena said slowly. He wasn't warning me to leave, Vera said. He was demonstrating, Serena said. That he knew how to hurt you. Vera didn't answer. She didn't have to. How did you get from Monterey to Emilio Varro? Vera looked at the window for a long moment. After 6 months, Marcus made me an offer. Work with him. Feed him information about Varro family movements, financial flows, organizational structure. In exchange, freedom. Full, clean freedom. No more monitoring. My life back. Did you take it? I told him I would. Serena heard the precision of that phrasing. I told him I would. Not, I did. Then I used the one contact I had developed during those 6 months, a Varro associate who ran logistics for the Northern Corridor, and I sent a message to Emilio Varro directly. She paused. I told him everything. Marcus's plan. His approach. His method. Everything he had told me in confidence in that room in Monterey. You went to Emilio. I gave him Marcus's entire playbook. A breath. In exchange for one thing. What? Protection for you. Her voice was steady, but the steadiness cost something. Serena could see what it cost her. Not for me. I didn't ask for anything for myself. I asked Emilio Varro to put a watch on you. To monitor anyone who came near you. To make sure that if Marcus Lane ever moved against you, ever used you the way he had used you against me, there would be someone in position to stop it. Serena sat with this. She sat with the shape of it. The architecture of a decision made 4 years ago by someone who had known her since they were both 19 years old. Vera had walked into a room with one of the most dangerous men in the Western Hemisphere. She had traded her only leverage, the information Marcus Lane had given her in confidence, for nothing. Not her freedom. Not her life back. Not even the ability to come home. Just a watch on Serena. Just someone in position to stop it. For years, Serena said. Yes. You spent 4 years inside his world. I was not a prisoner after that. Emilio didn't keep me. But I couldn't go back to my life. Marcus still had eyes on me. Going back to you would have made you visible again. So I stayed inside a world that wasn't mine. Building a life in the margins of something I had never chosen. For years, Serena said again. Just the 2 words. Because sometimes 2 words are the only container big enough for what you're trying to hold. Vera looked at her with the eyes of a woman who had made a calculation 4 years ago and had never once, in 4 years, stopped paying the price of it. You want me to say it was worth it, Vera said quietly. No, Serena said. Then what do you want? Serena looked at her for a long time. I want to know why you didn't tell me. Her voice was very quiet. Not then. I understand then. But Emilio knew about me. He had resources. He could have. I asked him not to, Vera said. Why? Vera was quiet. Because knowing would have brought you here. Into this world. Into this room. Into exactly this situation. She paused. And I spent 4 years making sure that never happened. She looked at Serena. And here you are anyway, she said. Walk me through the ceremony from Marcus's side, Serena said. It was the next morning. Vera was at the window. Emilio had not returned. 6 weeks ago, Vera said, Marcus issued the condition. Emilio married publicly to a woman who was not you. Specific date. Specific witnesses. She paused. What Emilio told you about the condition was accurate. As far as it went. As far as it went, Serena repeated. The condition was not the whole plan. The cold that had become familiar in the last 18 hours settled deeper. Marcus knew that the public ceremony would destabilize you. Emotionally. Psychologically. That you would leave. That Emilio would have to explain. That in explaining, Emilio would have to bring you deeper into the truth of his world than he had ever intended. He used the ceremony to force Emilio's hand, Serena said. He used the ceremony to force both of your hands, Vera said. He needed you inside the truth. He needed you knowing. Because a Serena Blake who knows the full architecture of the Vera world is a significantly more valuable pressure point than a Serena Blake who thinks she is simply in love with a complicated man. Serena stared at her. He wanted me to find out. He needed you to find out. The condition wasn't protection, Serena said. The pieces assembling themselves now with the cold clarity of a structure revealing itself completely. It was an exposure mechanism. He forced the ceremony knowing it would crack everything open. Knowing Emilio would have to explain. Knowing I would end up inside rooms I was never supposed to be in. Yes, Vera said. Which means everything I've been told in the last 48 hours. Is exactly what Marcus needed you to know, Vera said. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Serena had ever heard. She stood. Walked to the window. Stood beside Vera and looked out at a city moving with complete indifference to everything happening 4 floors above it. He's not finished, she said. No. The ceremony was phase 1. Yes. What's phase 2? Vera was quiet for a moment. That depends on what you do next. What do you mean? Marcus doesn't control outcomes, Vera said. He controls information and positioning. He puts people in rooms with truths they can't unknow and then he waits to see which direction they run. She looked at Serena. The direction you run from this room is the variable he's built his phase 2 around. Serena absorbed that. So he's watching. He's always watching. And whatever I decide. He's already planned for it. She paused. Almost every version of it. The word almost landed like a blade. Almost, Serena said. Vera looked at her. You are the one variable, Vera said quietly, that Marcus Lane has never fully been able to predict. Why? Serena said. One word. Flat. Direct. Vera understood the question without needing more. Why was Serena the unpredictable variable? Why had any of this begun with her specifically? She was an architect from Atlanta who organized her weeks on Sunday evenings and believed the right plan executed with precision could solve almost anything. Why her? Vera sat down. She placed both hands flat on the table in front of her. The gesture of someone about to carry something heavy across a very short distance. Your mother, Vera said. Serena went very still. Her mother had died when Serena was 23. A quiet woman. A private woman. A woman who had practiced contract law for 30 years and had never, as far as Serena had known, had any connection to anyone who drove black cars and left bars before finishing their drinks. My mother was a contract lawyer, Serena said. She represented small businesses. She lived in Decatur. She drove a Honda. She did, Vera said. She had nothing to do with. She drafted and witnessed 3 agreements between the Vera organization and Marcus Lane's predecessors between 2001 and 2007, Vera said quietly. The room stopped. The agreements concerned the transfer and protection of certain financial instruments the Varro family needed documented outside their usual channels. Your mother was chosen because she was discreet, meticulous, and had no traceable connection to either party. Vera held her gaze. She never knew the full nature of what she was documenting. She was a professional doing a carefully selected job. She was never told. No. She didn't know. No. That was deliberate on both sides. A pause. But knowledge of her involvement existed. In records. In the specific, dangerous kind of records that certain people spend years trying to locate and control. And when she died, those records didn't die with her, Serena said. They became a question, Vera said. Who did she tell? What did she keep? What might have passed even without her knowing she was passing it to the person closest to her? Serena felt the cold reach places she hadn't known she had. To me, she said. You were her daughter, Vera said. You were in her home. Her papers. Her files. Her memory. You might know nothing. You almost certainly know nothing consciously. But in Marcus Lane's world, might and almost certainly are not good enough. He was never targeting me because of Emilio, Serena said. No. He was targeting Emilio because of me. Vera said nothing. Which was the loudest confirmation Serena had ever received. She sat with that. She sat with the specific, staggering weight of realizing she had not stumbled into someone else's story. She was the beginning of the story. She had always been the beginning. And no one had told her. The most painful discoveries are not the ones that reveal who other people are. They are the ones that reveal who you have always been without your knowledge or consent. Emilio walked through the door at noon. He looked at Vera first. Then at Serena. And in the split second between those two glances, Serena saw everything she needed to know about how much he already understood. All of it. He had known all of it. Sit down, Serena said. He sat. Vera moved to the window. The 3 of them formed a triangle of knowledge in that room, each carrying a different portion of the same truth, and for a long moment nobody said anything. You knew about my mother, Serena said. Not a question. Yes, Emilio said. Before the gala. Yes. You knew that Marcus's interest in me had nothing to do with you initially. It had something to do with me once you became publicly mine. But the origin was your mother. Yes. He held her gaze. I knew. She absorbed that. Why, she said carefully, did you pursue me at that gala if you knew what I was walking into by being near you? The question sat between them. Emilio was quiet for a long time. This was the question underneath all the other questions. Not what did you do? Not why the ceremony? Not who is Marcus Lane. Why did you let me in? Because removing you from the picture was no longer possible, he said. Marcus had already identified you. Removing myself from you would not have made you invisible. It would have made you unprotected. A pause. And because I had read a file on you for 3 weeks before that gala. I knew your history. Your work. Your patterns. I knew about your mother. I knew about Vera. Serena felt something shift. You knew about Vera before the gala. Yes. You knew she was alive. Yes. You knew where she was. Yes. She looked at him. And you said nothing, she said. No. For 6 months you watched me carry the grief of losing her. Yes. And you said nothing. No. The room was very quiet. Vera, at the window, did not turn around. Why? Serena said. Because Vera asked me not to. He paused. For the same reason she had always asked. Because she believed that knowing would bring you here. I'm here anyway, Serena said. Yes, he said. He looked at her with something that was not quite remorse and not quite regret but lived in the complicated space between them, the space where a man knows he made the least wrong choice available to him while understanding that least wrong is not the same as right. I kept Vera's existence from you for 6 months, he said. I watched you grieve someone who was alive and I said nothing. That was a deliberate choice. I will not pretend otherwise. The honesty of it landed harder than any apology could have. Was it worth it? Serena said. He didn't answer. Which was itself an answer. There was a moment, sometime in the afternoon of that second day, when all three of them stopped talking. Not because nothing was left to say. Because what was left required a particular kind of silence first. The kind that could only be earned through the words that came before. Emilio had stepped outside to take a call. Serena and Vera sat in the same room for the first time without the immediate pressure of revelation between them. Just the two of them. The way it had been for 3 years in a dormitory and an apartment, and every version of a shared life that Serena had once believed would simply continue indefinitely. Do you remember, Vera said quietly, the night your mother called you from the hospital the first time? Serena looked at her. You were in the library, Vera said. It was 11 p.m. You answered your phone and you went completely white and you just sat there on the floor between the stacks and didn't move. A pause. I sat next to you on that floor for 3 hours. I didn't say anything. I didn't try to fix it. I just stayed, Serena said. I stayed. Serena felt something move in her chest. The specific, devastating thing that happens when someone reminds you of who they were to you before everything changed. That's who you are to me, Serena said. That's who you have always been. I know, Vera said. And you left. Yes. You sat on a floor with me for 3 hours and then 4 years later you left a key on a counter and disappeared. Yes. And I understand why now. I understand the mechanics. The threat. The condition. The calculation. Her voice was steady. Careful. But understanding why someone did something does not remove 4 years of believing they simply chose not to stay. Vera looked at her. Her eyes were bright but controlled. The particular brightness of someone who has decided they do not have the right to cry in front of the person they hurt. No, Vera said. It doesn't. The grief I carried was real, Serena said. Even if the reason for it was wrong. Yes. I am going to need time to separate those things. What was real? What was false? What I built in the space where you were. I know. I don't know how to do that quickly. I am not asking you to. The room held its silence. Then Serena said, very quietly, toward the window. I'm glad you're not dead. It was the simplest thing she had said in 2 days. It was the truest. Vera made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob and existed in the specific frequency between them that no one else in the world would have understood. "I'm glad you're not dead either," she said. And in those 6 combined words between 2 women who had loved each other through a silence neither of them had chosen, lived the only moral truth this entire story had been moving toward. Love does not stop existing because it goes quiet. Sometimes silence is the most expensive form of love there is. And sometimes you don't recognize it as love until you're standing on the other side of it, changed, broken open, and still breathing. Rios came at 3 in the afternoon. Not with coffee this time. With a look that said the time for coffee was finished. He spoke to Emilio in the hallway in a voice too low to carry through the door. Serena watched through the glass panel as Emilio's posture changed, not dramatically, the way other men's postures changed under pressure, but in the specific, contained way that meant he had received information requiring immediate movement. He came back inside. He looked at both of them. "Marcus has moved his timeline forward," he said. "Something in the last 48 hours changed his calculation. We have a narrow window." "For what?" Serena said. "For me to close the exposure before it becomes something I cannot close." He began moving. Jacket. Phone. The quiet, efficient preparations of a man who had spent his entire adult life ready to leave a room at speed. Serena stood. "Emilio." He paused. "Before you walk out of this room," she said, "you are going to tell me the one thing you should have told me at the beginning." He looked at her. She looked back. "Not the strategy," she said. "Not the plan. Not the calculation of what was safer for me to know or not know." A pause. "The one real thing. The thing that was only ever between you and me." The room was very still. Vera was somewhere behind her. Rios was somewhere outside. And Emilio Varro stood in the middle of a safe house and looked at a woman he had spent 6 months protecting in the most brutal and loving way he knew how. He said, "I didn't pursue you at that gala because of Marcus. Not because of your mother's documents. Not because of any calculation about positioning or threat management." She waited. "I pursued you," he said, "because in 3 weeks of reading a file about a woman I was supposed to be monitoring from a distance, I had already decided I would rather be destroyed than leave you outside of what I could protect." He let that sit. "That was the most dangerous decision of my entire life." He held her gaze. "And I would make it again." He walked to the door. He stopped. "Vera will tell you the rest," he said. "The rest of what?" Serena said. "What your mother left behind." He looked at her one final time. "Not documents. Not records. Something she left specifically for you. Something I have been holding since 3 months before the gala." A pause. "I should have given it to you the moment I decided you were mine. That was wrong. I am sorry." And then he was gone. And the word sorry, the word she had been told Emilio Varro did not own, sat in the room like a stone dropped in water. Spreading outward. Reaching everything. Serena turned to Vera. Vera was already reaching into the inside of the ivory wedding dress. Pulling out a sealed envelope. On the front, in handwriting Serena had not seen in 3 years. Her mother's handwriting. Her name. Her hands were not shaking. She noticed that. She was holding an envelope in her mother's handwriting, an envelope that had apparently spent 3 months inside the Varro organization, inside a file built about her, inside a world she had never been meant to enter, and her hands were completely still. She had gone past the kind of shock that expressed itself physically. She was operating now in the particular clarity of a person who has been broken open so many times in 48 hours that the breaking had simply become the baseline. She looked at Vera. "How long have you known about this?" "Since this morning," Vera said. "Emilio told me when he came back." He said he'd been carrying it since February. February. 4 months before the gala. He had been reading her file in February. He had found an envelope her mother had left. He had held it for 4 months without telling her. She filed that away. She would feel the full weight of it later. Right now there was only the envelope. She opened it. Inside was a single folded page. Her mother's handwriting. Neat. Precise. The handwriting of a woman who had spent 30 years making documents that other people's lives depended on getting right. She read it once. She sat down. She read it again. The letter was dated 18 months before her mother's death. It began. Serena. If you are reading this, it means someone found you before I could explain. I am sorry for that. I am sorry for many things I did not explain in time. She kept reading. Her mother had known. Not everything. Not the way Vera knew or Emilio knew. But she had known enough. She had known that the agreements she had documented were not routine contract work. She had known that the parties involved were not the kind who allowed their documentation to age quietly in a filing cabinet. She had known that eventually, not immediately, not soon, but eventually someone would come looking. And she had done the only thing she could think to do. She had written a letter. And she had given it not to a lawyer, not to a bank, to a man she trusted. A man whose name appeared in the final paragraph. A name Serena read once. Then read again. Then set the letter very carefully on the table because her hands had finally started shaking. The man her mother had trusted with the only record that mattered. The man she had given the letter to before she died. Was not a stranger. Was not someone from the edges of a world Serena was still trying to understand. Was someone Serena had looked at every single day for 6 months. Someone who had handed her coffee before she asked for it. Someone who had cooked scrambled eggs with too much butter and looked at her like she was the most dangerous thing he had ever let himself love. Emilio had known about the letter. Not because he found it. Because her mother gave it to him. Before Serena ever walked into that gala. Before any of it. Before the mezcal and the 4 hours of conversation and the car at midnight and the ring in dark gold and the cathedral with 600 people and all of it. Her mother had known Emilio Varro. And the question that cracked through everything Serena Blake had ever believed about her own life split her open completely. How? She sat in that room for a long time after everyone had gone. Her mother's letter on the table. The city outside still moving. The world still indifferent. And Serena Blake sitting inside the ruins of a story she had thought was about a man and an altar and a public betrayal. Realizing it was never about any of that. It was about a woman who had practiced contract law for 30 years and driven a Honda and lived quietly in Decatur and apparently known things she never once spoke out loud. Things she had carried alone. Things she had trusted to the one person she believed could protect what mattered most. The same person who had walked into a gala and handed her daughter a glass of mezcal without asking. Nothing in Serena's life had been accidental. Not the roommate who left the keys on the counter. Not the gala. Not the 4 hours of conversation. Not the ring. Not the cathedral. Not the grief. Not the love. Not any of it. And the only moral truth she had carried out of 48 hours of devastation was this. The people who love you most are not always the ones who explain themselves. Sometimes love looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like a key left on a counter. Sometimes it looks like a man who holds a letter for 4 months because he is not yet sure you are ready to know who you are. Sometimes you don't understand what someone built for you until you are standing inside the wreckage of it, alive, broken open, and still breathing. Was every person in this story protecting Serena, or were they all controlling her in the name of love? Where exactly does protection end and a lie begin? How did Serena's mother know Emilio Varro, and what did she know that she never told her daughter? Drop part 3 in the comments right now if you need the truth. Because what Serena finds inside that letter is only the beginning. The real question is not who her mother was. It is who Serena was always meant to become.